OPEC has made one of its biggest moves in recent history, and the world is about to be shaken. The cartel of major oil producers and their allies, led by Saudi Arabia and Russia, approved its largest output cut since the outbreak began. The cut is equivalent to around 2% of world oil demand and will only take effect from November. But prices have already started to rise to put even more burden on consumers and governments. OPEC was established in 1960 to coordinate its members' petroleum policy and give its members technical and economic assistance. OPEC is a cartel that strives to manage oil supply in order to determine the price of oil on the global market, avoiding swings that could harm the economies of both producing and purchasing countries. The actions of this single consortium, also considered a cartel, will cause a lot of trouble in the world, considering that there has already been a lot of energy crisis since Russia started its attack on Ukraine. The deciding meeting, which was held as the first OPEC meeting since the pandemic, saw the drastic decision to cut down oil production by as much as 2 million barrels per day. The 24-member cartel is currently producing 29 million barrels. Interestingly, this decision comes at a time when prices are already heading for the roof, amid an energy crisis. While the announcement stands further to sever the relationship between Saudi Arabia and the U.S., that is just the beginning of the intensity of the problem. The Biden administration called the decision short-sighted, as it vowed to continue its release of more oil out of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, something the government has been doing since March of this year. The cartel has given a rather obscure reason for the sudden decision to cut down production, saying that they had to make a move because of uncertainty that surrounds the global economy and oil market outlook. While no one can really tell the extent to which this major move will affect the rest of the economy and the world, we can expect it to be pretty devastating. But on the flip side, it could also backfire on OPEC, causing some damage to their operations. But that remains unlikely. We will go deeper into that possibility later in this video, so keep watching. Now, the Saudi Kingdom leadership also has some good concerns, which may have led to the decision, which could be considered drastic given the current state of the world, on the brink of recession. Maybe we are already in a recession before we know it. The Saudi Kingdom is concerned about Western countries like the U.S. stockpiling oil. Since March 2022, the U.S. alone has released 134 million barrels of oil that have been released into the U.S. market from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. However, the global total oil outflow has been 180 million barrels at the same time, so supply could as well be getting ahead of demand, which could mean prices will be falling, something Saudi Arabia and its allies in OPEC won't be too happy about. Through the production cuts, prices could be fixed through demand and supply, converging naturally, although too many hands are trying to fix those prices due to the recent world dispensation impacted by the war in Ukraine. The loss of 2 million barrels from the market would have a significant impact because the world needs up to 100 million barrels of oil every day. The decision is viewed as a bid by Saudi Arabia to support prices, which had risen as high as $120 per barrel throughout the spring, but started to fall because of worries about a weakening global economy. In September, they declined to less than $90 per barrel. The fact that this is the alliance's first in-person gathering since the pandemic started, according to observers, is one indication of its heightened emphasis. The last time OPEC held one of these meetings was in May 2020, when oil prices took a nosedive and the cartel had to control prices due to low demand. Their recent decision goes against what it has been doing since then, increasing production after the COVID pandemic. OPEC started by cutting 1/10 of September's newly announced 2 million barrels. Although the cartel poses as trying to stabilize prices, there could be an ulterior motive, like making a mockery of Biden, who made a trip to the Saudi Kingdom, only to return with failure to make any headway with regard to energy and oil in particular. Biden wanted the Saudi Kingdom to increase returns, but this is what he got in return: production cuts. While Biden may be unwavering in his convictions, this production cut is lining the pockets of the Russians, which means they can keep their war efforts. Saudi Arabia hasn't publicly laid out its stance on the invasion, and this silence could mean a lot regarding the decision Saudi takes at OPEC. Russia is largely dependent on oil production, and low prices could seriously blow their efforts. But on the flip side, Putin is using his co-chair status on OPEC to support his country while maintaining his invasion of Ukraine. It isn't only the U.S. that is having a hard time. Europe, amidst energy regulations and sanctions on Russia, mainly through oil price fixes. Another implication could be that Russia is expecting low production and in turn is seeking to make amends for its upcoming losses through price hikes. The assertion is against the background that Russia has never asked for or wanted production cuts, and if the country has allowed the decision now, it must be serving it in some way, not just to stabilize prices. The reason must be good for its war efforts. Due to sanctions, the country is currently producing record low levels, and the price hike induced by production cuts by the larger cartel could be the salvation Russia and Putin need. But Saudi Arabia must be willing to take a hit as well. The world is already burdened with high inflation and massive hikes in commodity prices. Leading economists and energy experts predict that the production cuts greatly impact the already dire situation we face. Most countries are rolling out monetary policies to try and tighten loosening economies, and the production cut doesn't help. After the announcement, oil prices soared, and it is anticipated that they will continue to rise. According to analysts, the price of crude oil will soon surpass $100 per barrel. The United States has reacted strongly to the reduction in oil production and, as a temporary solution, opened its emergency petroleum reserve. The oil cut disturbed the world because it threatened to push back countries that are still recovering from the pandemic's full impact. Fears of a recession have been stated as a result of high pricing. In addition, the demand and supply rule would take effect, which says that prices rise when supply is less than demand. As a result, fuel prices will surge. Prices are already beginning to rise. Oil prices were up 4% even before the cut was announced. Global oil prices, which skyrocketed in the year's first half, have now plummeted on concerns that a global recession will reduce demand. Brent crude has declined by 20% since the end of June. Following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the global benchmark reached a high of $139 per barrel in March. OPEC and its allies, which control more than 40% of global oil production, are seeking to avoid a reduction in demand for their barrels caused by a dramatic economic downturn in China, the US, and Europe. Rising oil prices could mean greater inflation for longer, putting additional pressure on the Federal Reserve to raise interest rates even more aggressively. However, while the drop is a positive sign for oil prices, its impact may be limited because several smaller OPEC countries were failing to fulfill their earlier output objectives. In addition, according to Rystad Energy, the global oil sector will be oversupplied from now to the end of the year, reducing the impact of output cuts on prices. So the potential impacts may not be dire after all. What do you think the OPEC production cuts mean for the world? Let us know in the comments. Remember to subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.